Hey everyone, welcome to this session of ConsensusCON entitled How a Consensus Sales Rep Uses Demo Automation to Sell Consensus. I will be presenting to you today. ConsensusCON is focused on helping our customers and future customers um, get the most out of pre-sales by using demo automation. And our presenter lineup includes some of our top accounts, industry experts, internal employees, and others. We're happy to announce that in a few days, we'll be launching our forum to continue to help build our user community, give you a space to communicate with one another and discuss best practices. We're also going to be starting a monthly webinar series for our users beginning in December to help continue to provide more resources for you. Our recording of this session and all the other sessions at ConsensusCon is going to be provided afterward, and there will be a Q&A session at the end of this. So if you have any questions you'd like us to address, put them in the Q&A section. That'll be the easiest for us to manage. Miles Taylor, who's on our customer success team, is facilitating this session, and we have an ongoing joke that you have to have uh, the word Taylor as part of your name to work here anytime we get on a call together. But going into this, just before I get too far ahead of myself, if everyone who's on the call, if you would mind using the raise hand function to let me know if you can hear me. Awesome, I'm seeing some hand raises. If you could put them down and then raise your hands again if you can see my screen. I'm just presenting how a consensus sales rep uses. Okay, awesome. It looks like we're good to go. Jumping into this, I just wanted to share a little bit about me. I have 4 years or so experience at Consensus. I was one of the first employees in 2014. I went to a few other companies and I'm back now. And then I am really hoping we get some more snow. It's been quite dry here, so we can go skiing here again soon. Outside of work, I have 3 young sons that occupy most of my time, and I live in a rural part of Utah, just working remotely. That's a picture of the small town I live in coming in from the highway. So jumping into this is a really short introduction to Consensus. Most of you probably already know all about Consensus. You probably already use it and could provide some tips to us. But as a short introduction, our tool will dynamically personalize video content based on each user, based on what their role is and what their interests are. We're going to change the length and order and which videos are being shown so that it's relevant to the viewer. And then going into this, after they've watched it, you'll be notified with exactly what they watched, rewound, or skipped, and what's interesting to them. We'll also aggregate those analytics across that buying group so you can see exactly where there's alignment within the organization or where there isn't, and help prepare you for that next call. I've blanked out the names here, but we'll also be gathering those in terms of stakeholder discovery to help learn about new individuals that it's being shared with. So this session is primarily going to focus on the benefits of consensus for salespeople. And some of that I have listed here, automating repetitive demos, educating and qualifying your prospects, learning about new people in the buying group, giving your sales team an on-demand access to demos and increasing their capacity to sell are some of the things we're going to talk about. Definitely not suggesting that these are the only benefits to sales or that they're the only benefits to consensus, but some of the things we're going to focus on. And a couple other disclaimers here. All of this is from my personal experience, and you can try my ideas, challenge them, do what works for you guys. Don't feel that this is required or that it's the only way to do it. And then obviously consensus doesn't replace salespeople yet. We're looking to help automate repetitive demos and augment the demo process, but certainly not suggesting that you could wholly replace people with consensus. I'm going to be talking a lot, but a lot of these use cases are going to rely on Consensus Snap, and you're probably familiar with that as well. But for anyone who isn't, it's a browser extension that works for either Chrome or Microsoft Edge. It also works as an email extension for Gmail or Outlook. It gives you access to any of the videos you've uploaded into Consensus to create links and send them out, to create a new version, a new video to send out. You do have a light Demolytics page there and access to previously sent links. If you want to see a full demo on this, go to Miles's session. He's the facilitator here. He is presenting on that at 1 o'clock. So I'll spare you that demo and recommend that you go to his.
Hey, Taylor, that is actually tomorrow morning
Oh,
at 9 o'clock.
thanks for the correction. Go to it tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. For some reason, I
Thanks.
had it wrong there. So we're gonna pause on this slide for a second. This is roughly some selling stages that I've outlined that we have internally at Consensus. Um, Certainly not always the case. It's just to give a general outline for where Consensus can fit in. And also going back to that other disclaimer before, your sales stages could look different than this, and take it for what it's worth, and find some ideas and ways you could apply this in your sales cycle based on your situation. But one of the things we want to do first is qualify the prospect, and that's from our perspective. We want to see if they're a good fit for Consensus. We want to ask discovery questions and learn about their organization and their needs and problems. From their perspective, they're trying to learn about what we do. And so there's a need to educate, qualify, discover who's going to be on the buying group or among those stakeholders on both sides. Another stage is going to be a bit putting together a business case. From our perspective, we're helping them um, have all of the resources they need and really enable the buyer to convince others on their team that we're the solution they should pick. And on their perspective, they're looking to prove what we do. Outside of just you telling me, how can you prove this? Do you have any success stories, or can you show me an ROI? And then if we have been successful this far, and they like the solution, they've chosen it, there's going to, and I realize I'm really oversimplifying here, but at some point there's going to be some red lines that are going to be needed. You might have approval for things like GDPR, or your SO reviewing the terms and conditions and things like that. And then if you get past that stage, of course, it's time to close and actually sign the agreement and move forward. And I'll show you a few ways we can fit into that. And the last stage is, of course, getting them implemented and using your solution, or taking advantage of your services. And there's a few ways that Consensus fits in there as well. So we're going to go into these one at a time, and just I'm going to share what the benefits are and a few examples of where Consensus fits in those situations. So the first one, when we're introducing Consensus, the object is to educate the prospects, to qualify them, to discover new people on their team. Commitments you might give to the prospect is, hey, we've got a call coming up. Before this, will you view this and share it with your team? Or maybe after a live call. A very common thing that they'll say in business to business sales is, hey, I love it, but I need to share this with my team. What do you have for me? And if you can send something that will be tailored to each stakeholder's interests, that will be much powerful than a generic email or PDF. And then after they've viewed it, following up with them. So here's two examples of what those emails could look like. On the left-hand side, hey, we're looking forward to our call. Between now and then, will you watch this demo? It's a pretty easy ask. If they're interested in spending time on the phone with you, there's a good chance they'll watch your 5 to 10 minute intro demo. And when they do, when they show up to the call, they're past some of the basics. They're ready to jump in and ask questions. And you can spare yourself that 10 or 15 minutes of a very repetitive, hey, this is what we do explanation. On the flip side, if they do watch your video, and I use this email anytime in the sales cycle, anytime they watch one of my videos, and I don't do it every single time, but if they watch it, I'll send them a note, and all it says is, thanks for watching it. What'd you think? Screenshot of their analytics and a link for them to share it out or watch it again. And what I get a really good response from this. I know that some of you may be thinking it's a little creepy to sort of call out that I can see they're watching it and what the analytics are. But in general, it's very helpful. And they usually say, yeah, I liked it. This is what I did watch it, and I'm going to planning on sharing it with my team. And if you wanted to be a little more subtle about it, and you didn't want to necessarily call out that you can see their analytics, you can send a similar email just saying, hey, did you have a chance to review the link I sent you, fully knowing that they did? And that garners a pretty good response as well, because of course they did view it. So going on to the next step here, when you're putting together a business case, you as a salesperson, and Garen talks about this a lot in a book he recently published, but you have a need to enable your buyers to be able to convince their team that they should choose you as a new vendor. At the end of the day, if you could be the one to speak with every stakeholder individually, you would. But a lot of times you're meeting with one person or a group of people that ultimately need to go convince others at their company, whether that's people on their team or executives above them, that they should choose you as a vendor, and why. And there's a few things that can help with that. I'm definitely not saying this is an exhaustive list, but these are a couple of examples. Having social proof. whether that's in the form of a testimonial or a case study or an actual call with the customer. Being able to show the ROI and showing them what your proposal would be, what the costs are, what the services are going to be, is certainly part of a business case a lot of times. As a few examples of how you could use consensus in this situation, one is we leverage a tool called the ROI shop. This is just a third-party tool that we use. You could do whatever you wanted for your ROI calculation, but where I've seen ROI calculators fail before is you just send over a link or you just send over a spreadsheet or you put together the numbers and send it to them and say, hey, based on your use case, like this is the ROI scenario I would see. What I like about this is it's more collaborative. We put together some scenarios and we give them the flexibility to choose some of the numbers and sort of build the ROI on their own without it taking a lot of their time to think through or put together formulas. And so what I'll do with this is I'll open Consensus Snap, record my screen, webcam, or both, and just explain the ROI tool, explain the scenario I've chosen, the rationale behind why I chose it, and invite them to plug in the numbers that I didn't know. If I know any of the numbers based on discovery, I'll fill them in. Um, Obviously, best scenario would be that you go through this with them on a call. And if you get the chance to do that, I still record a recording and send it out to them as a recap so that anytime they share it with others, they have that 1 or 2 minute explanation of what the tool is and how it worked. One other situation there, we had a virtual conference pretty similar to this one in April, where we had customers sharing different stories and things. And this is an example from that, as we uploaded a case study that was given by Brian Noling, and we can have an attached document if we wanted to as a PDF version of the case study. And it's a really easy way for a customer to hear a case study without having to be on a phone every single time with the client. Obviously, again, if you can get them on the phone with the customer and that's what they would like, that's the best case scenario. But this is a really good either in between or sometimes can work in lieu of a call with a customer reference. So those are two scenarios there. And the other thing I'd really like about this is it can be sometimes hard to get all the stakeholders that need to see that social proof in on the same customer reference call. Something like this can easily be viewed on their own time and they can share that with others. So doing pretty good on time, flying through some of these. We'll have a lot of time to dig in on some of these later ones that I think are really valuable, I guess. In terms of red lines and approval, this is one area that I really think consensus can make a big impact. And I think it's a little known use case for consensus, which is once you have gotten to the point where they have reviewed your proposal, they like the business case, they say, hey, we want to move forward. From the time an enterprise software company, which is our target audience, and again, yours may or may not be different than ours, but from the time they say yes to that when they're purchasing software, it could take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks for them to complete other processes that need to be done for redlining and approvals and security review. Just in the audience, um, go ahead and raise your hand if you've seen something similar in terms of complex red lines and approvals. Okay, we got some pretty quick hand raises. Um, and whether it's more simple or more complex than what I mentioned, I think you can see some value for this. And a big example I want to talk about is security review. And the reason is it seems like there is more and more things that get added every year to this. For example, GDPR laws are always changing and they're adding more to it all the time. They want to know that you're secure, that you're not going to share their data, that your integration points are also all secure, and that you have them. Do you have SSO? Is it a strict SSO? The laundry list of questions. I just those just hit the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure there's a whole list. Sometimes a security team just by default will just send a list of questionnaires that might have 100 questions on it that you need to fill out before you can complete a new vendor form and be on security. There needs to be a faster way. And I'm not saying this fits in every scenario, but I have seen it work really well. And I have seen it shortcut the time um, by a few weeks even. And it's to enable your buyer to preemptively answer the security questions that they're going to get, to be the trusted advisor in the situation and say, hey, I've been through a lot of these and security review usually comes up. I know we're looking at a target start date for next month. To ensure we hit that target, will you share this with your IT team? And what I mean by share this is we have a demo video that has a short introduction of our security. It's less than a minute. And we attach a lot of our security documentation. And then going into it, we're letting them choose which pieces of the security video matter to them. Some of them might not matter. They might just be looking at GDPR only or security only. And then once they're through that, not only are we giving them the documents, but we're walking through and explaining some critical parts of it. And if I could get every IT manager on a call, again, that would be ideal. The reality is a lot of times you're not getting them on the phone and they want you to just fill out the questionnaire first before they do anything for you. And when I've sent this and had the IT manager look at it first, a lot of times they send back 4 or 5 follow-up questions compared to asking us to fill out 100 questions because this answered a lot of what they needed. And that's the only thing they needed is a couple of follow-ups on a few areas. The other thing this does is, for example, if you have a procurement person or a lower level IT manager that is initially looking at the security review, they may need to run it up the chain on certain things. There's an invite others button again. They could easily get that up to their CTO or whoever they report to get some final approvals on security. That's all I'll say on this, but I don't want you to limit your imagination to security. Um, there's all kinds of application for red lines and approvals that go through later stages, and this is just one example. There could be other scenarios where you could see a good use for this as well, aside from what I've just mentioned. So wanted to talk about closing and getting them to make the final decision. The objective here, of course, is to resolve any final concerns they have, close the deal, and just move it forward. Not, hopefully wrap up anything that any last things they have. And so, looking into some use cases here, there's a few things that I've seen be very helpful. One is what we call a frequently asked questions demo. You might have an onboarding intro and a final proposal review. And an example of what a frequently asked question demo is it's just like it sounds. It's a very commonly requested demo. In this scenario where I'm talking about in the last stages of closing, it's a demo that is going to hold up the deal if you don't give it to them. For example, if someone says, "What does your Salesforce integration look like?" It's a must-have for us. We're not going to move forward with any new technology unless we integrate with Salesforce. I've got 2 ways I could respond. One is, yeah, great. I'm happy to show you a demo of that so we can show your team we do that. When are you available? We're probably looking at a few days at the least, probably maybe even a week or 2 weeks out before our calendars align with theirs and we get the demo done and then they review it and then they come back with questions and maybe we have another call. Um, and if it's something that's critical to the deal, you don't want to have a last minute demo like that come up, or if you do, you want to try and mitigate those situations. And so what I'll do is as soon as that concern comes up, or hopefully even before they've mentioned the concern, I've sent them the relevant frequently asked question demo, in this case, the Salesforce demonstration. It will let them go through a short intro video again, choose which pieces matter to them, and be shown just the relevant aspects of the demo that matter to them. And usually this answers all their questions on the Salesforce demo. It's generic enough that it can be canned, um, but it's specific enough that I can just send just the Salesforce one to them. And if we do have any follow-up questions, usually we're getting to that follow-up call sooner, and it's a good use of our time to jump on a technical call to go through a few things that they have on the Salesforce integration before they close. We have had, I wish I knew the client name and it was shareable and everything like that, but we have had multiple clients express to us that this was the sole reason they won a deal, was that a competitor said, "We'll schedule to fulfill this technical requirement with you. Let's do it next week." And they were able to just send the frequently asked question demo over and get them to watch it right away. And because of that, they saw them as more of a trusted vendor and they had the answer sooner. And just in terms of velocity, they just chose to pick them as the as the vendor because they had the solution right away. They didn't have to wait to sort of prepare an answer for next week. Another example that I'd mentioned is for a final proposal review. And I wish I want to articulate the problem here a little bit. You've met with your champion, you've talked with them about what you're going to, what the problem is, what the solution is, how you're going to approach that. And they've seen it, it's interesting to them, and they, at that point, they've sent the proposal on to their manager or whoever that is. And then at that point, that they might just be seeing a number. They might just be seeing, oh, consensus is X dollars, and that's all they know. You have an opportunity in consensus to review the value, record over the presentation, explain what consensus is, and then send it. Of course, again, if you could do that in a live call, that would be ideal. But a lot of times it's like, hey, I got to get this to my CTO for final signature. You may or may not want to hold the deal up by saying we got to schedule a call to explain everything to them first. But if you can explain the proposal and the value first, it does a couple of things. One is they're not reaching back out for follow-up questions. They can see right away what it is and how it works. And um, then you have the link to the service order right here where they can click to sign it. You have the attached document here. And I've had a lot of clients express to me that this was a really good experience for them and made it really easy for them to share it with others. There was one other one in there I wanted to touch on, sorry. Oh yeah, an onboarding intro video. I'm going to show the onboarding video here in the next few slides anyway, so I won't go to it now. But the idea here is that if you have a client that is wanting to get started in a couple of months, rather than holding off on training until they get started, there's an opportunity to send them recorded trainings to watch right now. And by doing that, you do a couple of things. You're introducing the team to the product sooner, so they're ready to go, and then you're also showing that um, you're ready to help get them started even before they've signed. All right, so going into implementation and the actual launch. And first of all, why does this matter to a salesperson? And maybe it doesn't for your organization. Maybe you have a very strict dichotomy of one is sales and one is customer support. And if so, then maybe this breaks out and it's more relevant to them. But in my experience, it can be very helpful for salespeople to at least be involved in an early transition of the client to the client success team. And uh, if your company is such that salespeople help with onboarding and with expansion opportunities for the new client, then it makes even more sense for them to stay involved in some degree. And so the objective, of course, is to transition them into a successful implementation. One thing that we've done is send automated trainings, send custom snap recordings explaining what the onboarding and next steps are. And it really helps in a few ways. When they get on that custom training call, they're able to ask questions and dive into what matters to them versus just going through the first training and then having to ask those questions on a second or third training call. And what that looks like is we have a training that will ask what role fits you best. We have a few different roles listed here. And if you were to choose admin, it would give you a really long list of things. As the admin, there's a lot for you to see and set up. And this is very different from our best practice for early stage demos is that you maybe only have 5 or 6 choices here. At this stage where you're information gathering, where they're just information gathering, it's okay to have it be longer. They're looking for more information at this point and they're ready to dig in on the tool. If they were to choose sales or marketing, it's going to show them a more limited scope that's more relevant just to those roles. But the idea being that after they've made their selections, they're only seeing the relevant training modules. They've got the knowledge base if they want to look for more, and then you'll be notified again what they watched, rewound, or skipped, and have an opportunity to follow up with some of those users that way. And so those are the topics I wanted to cover today on consensus. And just talking through it again as a quick recap, consensus can be used at many different stages in the sales cycle. It can be used early stage to automate repetitive introductory demos, and also at any point throughout to educate and qualify. And one other side note here is I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but that introductory demo to first introduce a new prospect winds up getting used at all stages in the sales cycle. As they start to invite new stakeholders into the buying group, they need their own introduction at that point as well. And so if there's one video that sort of gets used throughout, I would definitely say it's more of an introductory demo. And if you're somewhat new to consensus and just getting started, that's a really low-hanging fruit, easy opportunity to create that as your first demo video. And so we have a little extra time. We're going to go to Q&A. You're just before we jump to that, your next sessions are going to be with Earl Fieldman and Don Carmichael. Those are two tracks. They're both at 12. So you can pick one of those. If you really wanted to go to both, as a reminder, they're going to be recorded. But jumping into any Q&A questions that you guys had, is there any right now that we can start with, Miles?
Yeah, Rebecca had a question about when you're connecting the documents. I may need Rebecca to clarify here, but she says, is there a way to connect the documents onto Consensus so as we change the documents, it will update in Consensus? I'm guessing this was from the Salesforce part of it.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. I think she's saying, if I were to update a document, will it dynamically update in consensus? And the answer is no. The documents are static. They're just a file that you're attaching as a relevant document. That said, going back to my screenshot, one thing that I put in here a lot is the link to a document, whether that's to a service order or a different document versus a attachment. Usually what I'm doing as an attachment is like a case study or something like that that's going to be static no matter what. And then if I have something that may be updated over time that could be updated and included in the same link, I'll use a link to a document. Someone put Seismic in the chat. That's a good option. We use HubSpot. And so I just use a link to a document within HubSpot for that call to action there. And then if that gets updated, the same link would work. Great. Anything else anyone was thinking so far? Well, there's one that just came up. Yes, we will be providing recordings of today's sessions and for all of the sessions that are in DemoFest. I don't imagine they'll be instantaneous, but we will be providing the links to the sessions afterward.
I'd
And
probably wait until next week on those.
cool.
We had one other come in. Any tips or tricks with the pre-sales use case?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a very broad question. I'll give you a very broad answer. Feel free to clarify if you have any specifics on this. Um, with the pre-sales use case, what I would say, and just for anyone else, what we mean by the pre-sales use case typically is that we're expanding the reach of pre-sales. We're automating some intro demos so that they can be more consultative. We're not using pre-sales teams to be giving generic explanations. The pre-sales use case, any tips on it is one, I would record your videos such that they are very authentic content. You're just using your slides, your software, both. You're starting with an introductory slide that might look something like the first introductory slide I had in my presentation. And then from there, after you've gone through that introductory slide, I'll just jump to it really quick. After that introductory slide, you're just going into a demo. And then I would start, if you're like, where do we even start on this for this use case? I would start with the demos that are most requested. Start with your introductory demo and have pre-sales record that, make it available to the sales team. And then from there, maybe record anything that is very frequently asked. And you might not necessarily have to create this entire what we call an advanced demo for every one. You may just have an intro and some feature videos for some of them, or maybe even just a single video for some. But starting in order of an intro video and then frequently asked question type demos can be really, really valuable. Is that helpful on the pre-sales use case side? Do you have any follow-ups on that at all, Rebecca? Well, Miles, did you see anything else in the Q&A before we jump to the next session here?
Nothing else. No.
Cool. Well, we'll give you a few minutes back to your day, and we'll be back on. We'll be starting the next session 10 minutes before the hour. And so you have 10 minutes before that next session if you want to jump on before we're opening it up for people to join. Let's see. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for everyone joining today, and we'll go to that point.